The narrative of parental sacrifice is the most successful protection racket in human history. It is a cultural gaslighting campaign designed to transform a voluntary biological impulse into a lifelong debt. We are told that parents are heroes for doing the bare minimum required to keep a human being from dying, a human being they summoned into existence without a contract, a signature, or a request. It is time to dismantle the altar of the sacrificed parent. The foundational lie of parenthood is that life is a gift. To give a gift, there must be a recipient capable of receiving it. But before conception, there is no one. You cannot do a favor to a void. You cannot bestow a wonderful opportunity upon a non-entity. Procreation is not an act of altruism, it is an act of ego. It is the desire to see one's own features mirrored, one's own legacy secured, or one's own boredom cured. The child is the consequence of a parental choice, not the beneficiary of a cosmic charity. Life is not a gift, it is an imposition. You cannot claim credit for a favor that the recipient never asked for and had no power to refuse. Society loves to weep over the sacrificed father working 2 jobs or the mother with the sleepless nights. Let's be clear, providing food, shelter, and clothing is not a sacrifice. It is the legal and moral maintenance fee for the decision to procreate. When you buy a car, you don't brag about sacrificing your money for gas and oil changes. When you adopt a dog, you don't tell the dog it owes you its soul because you sacrificed your sleep to walk it. Yet parents expect a standing ovation for performing the basic biological duties they signed up for the moment they engaged in the act of creation. Working late, that's the cost of the lifestyle you chose. Sleepless nights, that's the job description you accepted. Feeding your kids, that is the bare minimum required to avoid a prison sentence. To call parenthood unpaid work is a peak narcissistic delusion. It frames the parent as a victim of their own choices. You are not an exploited employee, you are the founder of a startup that you insisted on launching in a saturated market. The phrase parenthood is unpaid labor is also deeply revealing. Unpaid by whom? The child never signed a contract requesting services. The child never hired anyone to perform parental duties. The so-called labor exists only because the parents voluntarily initiated the entire process. Parents are not employees unfairly exploited by children. They are participants in a self-created obligation. Fulfilling a responsibility is not a sacrifice. It is the absence of negligence. You do not get a trophy for not being a criminal. The phrase, "after all I did for you," is the calling card of the emotional extortionist. It is used to weaponize the child's existence against them. What exactly did you do? You fed the person you forced into existence. You clothed the person you created. You worked to sustain the life you initiated. Those are not extraordinary moral achievements. Those are obligations generated by the act itself. If I deliberately create a dependency, I do not become heroic for maintaining it. That is the contradiction at the core of parental sacrifice. You create a problem, provide the solution, and expect worship for it. You create a being that can suffer, starve, feel terror, loneliness, disease, exhaustion, and despair. Then you provide food and shelter and say, "Look how much I sacrificed." But the need for food only exists because you created the hungry person. The need for shelter only exists because you exposed someone to harm. The need for emotional support only exists because you created a consciousness capable of pain. Children are not indentured servants. They are not a retirement plan. They are not a captive audience for your grievances. Using the hard work of parenting to guilt-trip a child into submission is a confession of failure. It means you don't have a relationship based on love, you have a ledger based on resentment. The logic of the extortionist. I brought you here without your consent. I performed the basic tasks required to keep you alive. Therefore, you owe me your autonomy, your labor, and your constant gratitude. This is not love. This is a hostage situation. Gratitude cannot be demanded, it can only be earned. A debt that was never agreed upon is not a debt, it is a scam. We must flip the script of, "After all I did for you." The debt of existence does not flow upward from the child to the parent. It flows downward, eternally, from the creator to the created. The parent owes the child a lifetime of support for the imposition of existence. The parent owes the child an apology for every moment of pain the child must endure because they were brought into a terminal world. The parent owes the child the humility to recognize that they were not sacrificing, they were merely fulfilling the terms of a contract they forced upon another. The kid owes you nothing. Not obedience, not phone calls every Sunday, not carrying your dreams, not wiping your ass at 80 because you wiped theirs at 2. You were not generous, you were causal. You caused a life, so you are responsible for it. That is not love, that is cause and effect. Parents love to wax poetic about the invaluable opportunity to experience consciousness. They forget that consciousness includes the capacity for suffering, grief, anxiety, and the eventual certainty of death. You didn't just give your child life, you gave them a mortgage on a body that will eventually fail, a mind that will eventually worry, and a world that is often cruel. The kid was not waiting around to exist. Therefore, demanding praise for forcing someone into life is like shoving them into a marathon they never trained for, then expecting gratitude for the opportunity to run until their lungs burn. The sacrificed mother and the working father are not heroes. They are individuals living out the consequences of their own autonomy. It is time to stop canonizing the fulfillment of basic moral obligations. We must stop treating children as debtors and start treating parents as what they truly are, the architects of a person's needs and therefore the ones solely responsible for meeting them. The child is not a guest at your table. You were the one who forced them to be hungry.